It was a beautiful morning. After 2 weeks of torrential rain, the sun was finally shining. It was not yet 6 o'clock when the mischievous rays crept into the bedroom through the loose curtains. Lauren wanted to stay in bed a little longer, so she rolled over onto her other side. But the sunbeams danced across the mirrored surface of the old dresser opposite the bed, shamelessly dazzling her eyes. Muttering, "Shame on you," under her breath, Lauren reluctantly crawled out from under the blanket. On the other side, her grumbling husband stirred.
"Lauren, why are you up? It's still very early. Lie down a while longer."
"But I'm wide awake now, Paul. You sleep. I'll go make breakfast." A man's hand emerged from under the blanket, his grumbling transformed into a contented purr.
"You're my busy bee, my hard worker. You should rest. It's Sunday."
The woman exclaimed in surprise. "I completely forgot it was Sunday. That's what happens when I go on vacation. The days all blur together."
"That's because you try to do everything at once. You can't live like that, Lauren. You need to take it easy sometimes. And since you keep forgetting this rule, I'm happy to remind you."
Lauren gently moved her husband's hand away. "Paul, let's save the fooling around for later. While the sun isn't too hot, I'll check on the garden beds. Maybe pull some weeds."
"Don't bother. After all this rain, it's a swamp out there."
Lauren laughed. "Paul, you're such an optimist. Well, I'm off to work while the kids are sleeping." With obvious hope for refusal, the man asked, "Do you need my help?" Lauren smiled kindly. "No need. I'll manage. You just get in the way. Rest up. You'll be on a voyage soon." Paul burrowed back under the blanket.
"Yes, leaving Wednesday."
As Lauren headed for the door, her husband called out again,
"Listen, Lauren, I just had a brilliant idea. What about a picnic in nature?"
A mysterious smile played on her face. "That's a good idea. I'll cook something special and we can all sit in the gazebo. The children would love it."
"The gazebo's too boring. Let's go to the river instead. Find a private spot, make a picnic. Tyler and Annie will be thrilled. The sun will dry everything up by lunchtime."
The woman sighed expressively. "All right, you've convinced me. It has been a while since we've spent time together as a family." Lauren tiptoed out the door. On her way to the kitchen, she peeked in at her sweetly sleeping son and daughter. After putting the kettle on the stove, she paused in thought. She recalled a day 5 years ago when she and Paul spent hours by the riverbank. Their romance was just beginning then, each date revealing something new. The weather had been just as hot, and by mid-June, the river water had warmed to the temperature of steamed milk. Lauren had splashed in the shallows for ages. When she came ashore and began wringing out her hair, Paul picked up a nearby twig and started drawing in the sand. At first, his dashes, semicircles and strokes, seemed like random geometric shapes, but after adding a few connecting lines, the chaos transformed into a woman's portrait. Lauren was amazed. "Wow, just like a real artist," she exclaimed. Paul beamed at the praise.
"Lauren, I drew you."
The young woman looked at her portrait in the sand for a while and then said, "It's all right, and there's a resemblance, but you've made me sad. It would be better to draw me happy." Paul laughed and promised, "I will definitely fulfill your request, but only next time." "And why not today?" she asked. Still smiling, he replied, "I've used up all my artistic energy for today. I'm afraid it won't turn out as well the second time. I'm not an artist. I'm a self-taught amateur." But soon, life's events so entangled the loving couple that their riverside art session had to be postponed indefinitely. Occasionally, the woman would remind her husband, "Paul, you never fulfilled your promise." Since most men don't dwell on romantic moments from the past, Paul would furrow his brow in concentration each time.
"Lauren, remind me, please. What have I promised and didn't fulfill? I've chopped firewood for the whole year ahead, fixed the door in the greenhouse, and repaired the hole in the bathroom roof. What else?"
Her husband's confusion only encouraged Lauren more, but she never teased her beloved man for long. "Relax, Paul. It's not about the greenhouse or firewood. I'm just reminding you about your promise to draw my portrait in the sand. They would always laugh together at her playful reminder. Overall, these past 5+ years of Lauren's life had been filled with joy, all thanks to her attentive husband. Paul tried to protect his beloved wife from anything that might cast even a fleeting shadow of sadness. The kettle whistled on the stove, and she took a deep breath before filling a cup with the fragrant drink. After a light breakfast, she decided to check on the vegetable garden, but just as she stepped onto the porch, her phone, left on the nightstand, rang. Lauren rushed back into the house, muttering under her breath, "Lord, who needs me this early?" Grabbing her phone, she hurried back to the porch. The number was unfamiliar. Pressing the green button, she answered with an unfriendly, "Hello?" Through the phone came a voice she could recognize among thousands. "Lauren, it's me, Daryl." A nervous shiver ran through her body, and her heart pounded in her chest. "Why are you calling me? Surely not just to say good morning?" Something clicked loudly in the receiver, then fell silent. Daryl began fumbling with his excuses. "I'm sorry, Lauren. I completely forgot that etiquette requires exchanging greetings first. Hello, or good morning. Choose whichever you prefer." "Yes, it's quite unexpected to hear you," the woman replied sarcastically. "What could have possibly happened in your life that you'd condescend to call to a country fool? That's what you once called me, after all." "Lauren, why are you doing this? It's been so long. Time to forget those unpleasant moments." Lauren cut him off mid-sentence. "How did you get my number?" A satisfied chuckle came through the line. "You won't believe it, but it happened quite by chance. I met your grandmother's sister, Sarah, at the market, and she gave me your number." Lauren felt chills down her spine and her hair standing on end. She gasped in horror. "How could you have seen her if she died over a year ago?" The man laughed again. "I didn't say I met her yesterday. I can't give you the exact date, but it was sometime in October or November. By the way, she recognized me first, even though we'd only met once. We chatted a bit and she told me about your life. I must say, I'm glad things worked out well for you." Daryl fell silent, and Lauren wondered if the connection had been lost. A sigh was heard, followed by the curt voice of an old acquaintance. "Lauren, you probably realise that my call is for a serious reason. I can't tell you everything over the phone. We have to meet." A sense of womanly dignity stirred in Lauren's soul. She asked, stamping each word, "I have no desire to meet you. Tell me, what do you want?" Daryl explained hastily. "Lauren, don't hang up. I just expressed myself poorly. Give me your address. I'll come to you. It's a matter of life and death." Here was something in the former lover's voice that made Lauren give in to his request. "No, Daryl, don't come to my place. You've already broken my life once, and I don't want to repeat. I'll meet you on neutral territory." The old acquaintance began to thank Lauren, but there was no sincerity in his words. The woman intuitively felt that the meeting she had agreed to would not bode well for her. Yet it was too late to back out. Changing her mind after just a minute seemed awkward. Fate had been stingy with joys for those born on New Year's Eve. Perhaps by then fate had exhausted its generosity, leaving almost nothing for the newborn girl, born to a woman no longer young. This woman, Nicole Islington, decided to travel during her last month of pregnancy. She lived, to put it mildly, a carefree life, preferring pleasure to productive work. That December day she set out to visit friends. Nicole hoped to stay with an acquaintance for a week or two, unconcerned about her delicate condition. Simply put, she cared little for her pregnancy or her child's future fate. Though she reached her destination safely, contractions began just as she stepped off the bus. Strangers rushed to help. "What's wrong? Is it your heart?" Grimacing in pain, Nicole replied, "What heart? I'm in labour. I thought I'd at least celebrate New Year's properly, but such bad luck. Why now? Right before New Year's." The mother-to-be cried out loudly, and the helpful bystanders called an ambulance. She was taken to the hospital of the town, where she'd hoped to spend the holidays. Within an hour, Nicole delivered a baby girl. The doctor, not without humour, said cheerfully, "My, what a tiny baby. Did you starve her, Mum? She seems premature. Not even 2.5 kilos. Nicole bristled at the comment and snapped, "Then take this wretched baby. I don't need her. I'm homeless myself." The doctor interpreted this as postpartum syndrome. Women sometimes experience nervous breakdowns during labour. She tried to soothe the new mother. "You need to rest a bit. Childbirth is hard on every woman. Rest, and you'll feel better. This is your first successful delivery, isn't it?" "What does it matter what I had before?" Nicole grumbled. "I wanted a baby once, but not any more." The doctor gazed at her with compassion. "Children give us strength and can transform our lives. Trust me, tomorrow you'll see things differently. After all, a little person's life now depends on you." But the doctor's hopes proved futile. By morning, the new mother had fled the ward. In this small town, it was an emergency. The hospital administration reported the incident to the regional health authority. Orders came down, and local police joined the search. They found the new mother in a drinking den. Though drunk, she wore a happy smile. Her holiday wish had come true. She'd celebrated with kindred spirits. The negligent mother was taken to the station and booked. But Nicole remained indifferent, singing songs and cursing her strict mother. One officer hesitantly suggested, "Perhaps we should contact her relatives." Nicole laughed. "Let's make my mum happy. Her dream had come true. She became a grandmother." That same day, police officers contacted Nicole's mother through colleagues from a neighbouring town, and the district police officer appeared at Helen's doorstep. "Your Nicole has distinguished herself again," he said reproachfully. But the woman was terribly happy. "You found my daughter! Where is she? I've been worried. Haven't heard from my Nicole for almost 6 months." The police gave her a long look. "Ah, you rejoice too soon, Helen. Your Nicole is currently in the police station of the neighbouring district, and this time she's outdone herself." The woman barely heard his words, consumed by worry. Clutching her heart, she looked pleadingly at the district police officer. "Don't keep me waiting. Tell me, what's happened to my Nicole?" The policeman's expression softened. "Well, your Nicole is alive and well. She gave birth to a girl last night, but ran away from the hospital immediately after. Our officers found her quickly, but she was already drunk, making any conversation impossible." The stunned woman cried out, "Oh, God! What sins am I paying for? Why was she born to be so foolish?" As she sobbed, the district officer offered his sympathy. "Each of us has our own burden to bear until the end of our days. Why did I come to you? We need to take care of Nicole's daughter. After all, she's your granddaughter, isn't she? You know that childless families eagerly take in abandoned babies." Helen knew these circumstances well, having worked in the education system for decades. Despite all her efforts, she had failed to raise her daughter into a responsible person. Until 5th grade, Nicole had been quiet as a mouse, but then it was as if demons possessed her. She ran away from home twice, but was brought back both times. The girl settled down briefly, but her wanderlust merely got secret. After finishing high school, Nicole vanished from her parents' house, taking her mother's gold earrings and chains and savings. This time, the runaway left a note. "I want to experience real life. Don't look for me." The wayward daughter reappeared a 1.5 years later, arriving in a fancy foreign car with a flashy young man, whom she introduced proudly. "Mama, this is my boyfriend." She never mentioned his name or surname. Nicole's appearance caused quite a stir among the neighbours. Rumours added fictional details to the known facts. "Did you see? The former headmistress's daughter is marrying a wealthy man's son. The guy's straight out of the movies. And that car!" This sensational news spread throughout the settlement. After showing off to her fellow villagers, Nicole disappeared again, within 2 days. For 3 years there was no word from her. Helen inquired about her daughter through acquaintances and her sister in the regional town, but learned nothing concrete. Her sister mentioned seeing her niece at the train station among women of questionable character. Helen immediately dismissed her relative's suggestion that Nicole had gone astray. "Sarah, you're imagining things. Nicole may be wild, but she has her head on straight." After the policeman left, Helen grabbed her purse and passport and rushed to the bus station. A week later, she brought her daughter and granddaughter home from the hospital. She believed motherhood would motivate Nicole to change her ways. For over a month, Nicole played the role of a caring mother. She prepared formula and took daily stroller walks around the village. Helen even confronted her sister. "You said such things about Nicole, but look, she's a good mother, caring for Lauren, singing her lullabies." Sarah just sighed knowingly. "Helen, you're deceiving yourself. You're an educated person. You should know you can't change what's in the blood. Nicole's father was a notorious womanizer, and you know that. He abandoned you and your child without even saying goodbye. Nicole took after him in both appearance and character. You should have controlled your daughter from birth, but instead you indulged her every whim. No wonder that the results of this upbringing were disastrous. She's bound to fall." Her sister's words proved prophetic. One morning Helen woke to little Lauren's screams. She rushed to the next room, but her daughter wasn't there. Only a white note lay on the nightstand near the crib. "Mum, I'm sorry, but I can't go on like this. Being a mother is not my calling." That was Nicole's final message. She vanished without a trace. No letters, no calls. After years of searching, Nicole was officially declared missing. Lauren knew nothing of these family secrets. From her earliest years, she simply knew that her grandmother was always there, and Grandmother Sarah visited on holidays. She was about 5 when she first visited the big city. Sarah invited them, promising her grandniece countless delights. "Lauren, you haven't seen real wonders in your village. Come to me. I will show you things you'll never forget." Indeed, those few days became permanent memories. Grandma Sarah took Lauren to the circus and zoo, then shopping for beautiful clothes. Lauren was so thrilled she could barely contain herself. The trip's lasting impact was her realization that city life offered more excitement and opportunities. "When I grow up, I'll definitely live in the city," she declared to her grandmothers, who chuckled at her conviction. "To live in the city," Grandma Sarah explained, "you need an apartment and a good job." "I'll go to university first, then find a high-paying job," Lauren replied confidently. The sisters laughed at this too, knowing how rarely childhood dreams come true exactly as planned. But Lauren pursued her goal with remarkable determination. She was among the top students in the entire school. Before graduation, Lauren chose her career path. She first confided in her grandmother. "Grandma, can I tell you an important secret? Promise not to laugh." Helen maintained a serious expression. "If it's important, I won't laugh. I promise." The girl took a deep breath. "I want to be a teacher like you." The elderly woman's eyes welled with tears as she embraced her granddaughter. "My dear girl, teaching is a noble profession. I'm so glad you've chosen it." Lauren passed all her exams successfully and found her name on the list of students admitted with state funding. But in early September, as classes began, she was summoned to the dean's office. "We're very sorry, but there's a problem. You were taken onto the list mistakenly. We double-checked yesterday, but that last place was secured for a student on a paid program." Lauren nearly burst into tears right there, but the administrator quickly tried to console her. "Don't cry, dear, nothing's lost. You can still study, if you pay tuition." Initially relieved, Lauren's hopes crashed when she learned the cost per year. In despair, she cried out, "I'm an orphan! I have only my grandmother, who lives on her pension." After crying in the park near the college, Lauren sought advice from her grandmother Sarah. She still had hope that she would think of something. She always did.
When Sarah took up a case, it always resolved in favour of the weaker party. And listening to the crying girl's story, the relative said, "You're not the first, Lauren, and certainly won't be the last. I know how this works, and I am 90% certain they've simply pushed you aside. One of the rich kids needed to get into the college, and they chose you as the victim. A girl from the provinces. They think you don't need a good education." The elderly woman's answer made the girl even more desperate. In a trembling voice she asked, "Grandmother, can nothing be done? There must be justice in the world." "Forget about justice, baby. It hasn't existed in this world for a long time. Truth is on the side of those with money and connections." "What am I supposed to do?" Lauren cried out. "After all, Grandma and I have neither." Sarah squinted. "Don't shout or get desperate. We need to think this through carefully. Such serious matters aren't decided in 1 minute. But one thing I must ask right away. Don't say anything to Helen yet. Do you understand?" Lauren nodded, and the relative added, "Though Helen is younger than I am, she has a weak heart. Let her think for now that you're studying quietly, and you and I will surely find a way out." Sarah's confidence calmed the girl somewhat. She withdrew her documents from the college, as paid education was completely beyond her means. Lauren spent a few days in limbo, unsure of what to do, but Granny Sarah, as promised, found the best solution. "Lauren, a very wealthy household needs a responsible worker." The girl perked up. "I'll do it. What's the job?" The older woman lowered her eyes. "It's not exactly ideal work for a young lady, but given our limited options, it will do. Mrs. Kramer, the mistress of the mansion, where you'd maintain order and cleanliness, has promised good pay. You only need to be polite, diligent and honest, qualities you possess in abundance." Lauren seemed not to hear the requirements. She asked softly, "How much will I be paid?" The woman quietly named the amount, and Lauren's eyes widened with delight. A few months later, on behalf of the mistress of the house, with whom Lauren had established a good, even trusting relationship from the start, she and the driver went shopping in the city. At the shopping centre, Lauren happened to run into a former classmate. The girls chatted, and Tasha, wearing a sour expression, confessed, "I got kicked out of the college, had to settle the seamstress program. It isn't inspiring at all. I wanted to quit right away, but my father got angry, said he wouldn't keep a freeloader in his house. I'll probably spend my whole life sewing robes and pillowcases. Feel like howling just thinking about it." Lauren sympathised with Tasha, and trying to console her, admitted, "My situation is even worse. I couldn't get into college either. Had to start working. I'm with the Kramers now." Tasha gasped. "The Kramers? Oh, that's wonderful. Kramer is one of the region's wealthiest family. And his son studies in London." Of course, while working in the wealthy household, Lauren had learned some details about the owners' lives, but she never felt servile awe toward them. Mrs. Kramer herself never flaunted her high status. She enjoyed gardening and happily helped the cook prepare pies and pancakes. Mr. Kramer was equally modest in everyday life. Only about their son did Lauren know almost nothing. She first saw him during her second year working at the mansion. Daryl had grown bored with life in London and decided to seek entertainment at home. When the provincial girl first laid eyes on this blue-eyed, handsome man, she was stunned. Daryl's gaze mesmerised her, and his voice made her heart pound. The young man immediately realised the strong impression he made on the young housekeeper. Out of boredom, instead of not paying attention to the girl's size, he decided to hit on her. Mrs. Kramer saw everything, but didn't warn her son properly. Still, only said, "Daryl, don't get too carried away. Lauren is a good girl, but simple. Don't you dare hurt her." "Mum, how could you think that of me?" the son reassured his mother. "I'm merely showing respect to our housekeeper, nothing more." Indeed, from the outside, everything appeared proper. Daryl would help Lauren carry things, gladly take her to the market, and in the evenings they would sit together on a bench beneath the windows to chat. This continued for 2 or 3 months. Then one day, the Kramers were invited to a society party.
Though Darrell was expected to attend, he declined at the last moment, citing fatigue and poor health. "I'd rather rest at home. I'm tired of these insincere smiles, bows, and endless flattery. I'm sick of all this pretense." His parents didn't press the matter, though Mr. Kramer grumbled, "London has changed you, Darrell. Are you becoming a free thinker?" The young man held his tongue, knowing a response might spark an argument, and he wanted his parents to leave the house. With the cook also gone for the evening, the young couple found themselves alone in the vast house. Darrell wasted no time approaching the girl. "Lauren, set aside your work. Let's take an evening walk. We've known each other for some time now, yet I know so little about you." Lauren saw nothing wrong with his suggestion and replied cheerfully, "I'll join you. Just let me put away all the equipment and change." For about an hour they strolled along the manor's manicured paths, talking sweetly about various topics. Suddenly, Darrell grabbed her roughly and pulled her close. He kissed her, and Lauren lost all sense of control when he whispered, "Let's go inside, quickly." She followed him obediently. After that, she continued to yield whenever he sought intimacy. He would sneak into her room at night, leaving only at dawn. Lauren naively believed Darrell loved her and would eventually propose. Reality struck months later when Lauren became pregnant. When she confided in Darrell, he listened with obvious boredom, yawning several times before laughing in her face. "Baby, did you honestly think I'd marry you? How absurd! Look at who you are and who I am. Yes, you're in a difficult situation, but you should have thought ahead. There are plenty of ways to prevent unwanted pregnancies." "Darrell, I thought we—" Lauren whispered in horror, but he cut her off with another laugh. "You're truly living in a fantasy world. If you at least had looks. But you're just a grey mouse. No education either. You're meant for scrubbing floors. Go find a husband in your village, among the stablemen and tractor drivers." Darrell turned to leave the library, but paused. He approached the girl and seized her throat with such force that she gasped for air. He hissed, "If you breathe a word of this to my parents, I'll personally cut off your oxygen forever with these hands. Do you understand me?" The girl trembled with fear as he demanded again, "Do you understand? I can't hear your answer." She whispered through pale lips, "Yes, I understand everything. I won't tell anyone, please. Just let me go." That night, Lauren was afraid to sleep, and in the morning, citing grandmother's sudden illness, she left the Kramers' house, rushing. She feared that once Mrs. Kramer learned of her pregnancy, she would scold her severely and throw her out in disgrace. She had always been squeamish about unequal marriages, often saying, "To think of a decent man marrying a plain girl." It wasn't difficult to imagine her reaction if she discovered her son had had an affair with the housekeeper. Lauren decided not to risk it and quietly disappeared from the rich household, not even asking for her last paycheck. With all her hopes shattered, she went to her grandmother Sarah and confessed her trouble. Sarah lamented, "Oh, Lauren, you've made a mess, and Helen and I will have to deal with it again. How many weeks? Maybe there's still something we can do." The girl instinctively covered her stomach. "No, not that. I don't want to get rid of this baby. It's alive, after all, and already moving." Grandma Sarah cried, "My darling, no one is forcing you to commit a sin, but you must not go back to the Kramers. And you mustn't stay in town at all. I must call Helen, prepare her." Helen couldn't refuse shelter to her favourite granddaughter. Though the news of Lauren's pregnancy before marriage deeply shocked the elderly woman, she humbly said, "What God gives, one must accept. It's not man's will to dispose of someone else's life. It's okay. We've dealt with worse hardships than this. We'll cope with this one too." Tyler arrived on the date the doctors predicted. Nurses from other departments came to admire the blue-eyed baby. "Oh, what a handsome boy," Lauren enjoyed the admiration for her son, but tried not to dwell on the future. While Tyler was small, she helped her grandmother with household chores, and also the single mother didn't refuse to help the neighbours, who often asked her to help with wallpapering or arranging the flower beds. She earned modest payments for these services, but saved every penny for her son's education. "I didn't manage to study, so let my son have better opportunities," she would say. Lauren was determined not to let her boy face the same hardships she had experienced. Her loneliness, however, proved short-lived. A few years later, returning from her job as a caregiver in a kindergarten in town, Lauren noticed a truck parked on the roadside. From the cab, the driver waved to her. "Miss, don't pass by a trucker distressed." His appeal brought a smile to her face. "How can I help you?" The man replied seriously. "I had a breakdown and my phone's battery is dead. I can't leave my fully loaded truck. Please give me your phone to call for help." "Here you go. I have a full charge." She couldn't hear his conversation, but it was brief. He returned her phone with thanks. "You've been a great help." Lauren responded with the customary, "People need to be helped," and continued walking her way. She had nearly reached the turnoff leading to the village when she heard a car approaching. For safety, she stepped aside before turning around. The same driver she'd helped minutes ago jumped out of an older car, driven by an elderly man. "Young lady, don't think me forward, but something tells me our meeting wasn't chance. As you walked away, a voice kept shouting in my ears, 'Catch up with her. She's your destiny.'" Lauren laughed heartily. She liked the man's unusual explanation, and found him quite handsome too. "All right, let's say I believed you. But what about your truck? Isn't it unattended?" The man grinned slyly. "Not at all. The technicians arrived right after I called. While they check my truck, I thought we could chat. But I'm worried they'll fix it quickly, so I'd better ask for your phone number now." Lauren liked this man. She dictated her cell phone number to him. "It was a pleasure to meet you, Lauren. And my name is Paul, and I'm single, by the way." The young woman was seized with excitement. "Paul, aren't you going to propose to me right here?" A smile spread across her freckled face. "Why not? I'm a promising guy, and my salary is good." But Lauren stated firmly, "I'm an unstable candidate, though. I'm single, but I have a son. He is 2 years old. I hope you have no further desire to propose to me." Her joking tone turned sarcastic as she turned around and quickly walked away. However, her new acquaintance rushed after her. "Lauren, wait! Don't run away from me!" But from afar came the powerful horn of a large truck. That meant it was time for Paul to go back. "Lauren, I'll call you tomorrow. I'm sure we have a lot to talk about," he shouted. The next day, Paul called. Then he came to their village bearing gifts. Most surprising was that along with the cake and boxes of candy he brought toys. Lauren's little son immediately took to the gifts and began playing with the cars. After Tyler tested all the toy vehicles, he looked at the guest and asked, "Is that Daddy?" Lauren didn't know what to say, but Paul wasn't fazed. "Man, give me 5!" Paul held out his hand, and Tyler happily clapped his palm against it. "Shall we consider this male bonding complete?" Then he took the little one in his arms. "You and I, Tyler, are of the same blood." Helen was speechless with emotion. While they were preparing dinner, she whispered excitedly, "Lauren, what a decent man. Don't let him get away." Lauren only grinned. "Grandma, how naive you are. I've only known him for a few days." "So what?" the elderly woman persisted. "Some people get married right after their first meeting. My parents met during the war. They were together for only 2 hours. They rushed to the registry office, signed quickly, and then he was ordered east, she west. But they both survived. Maybe their love saved them from death." Paul became a frequent guest at Lauren's house. Later he confided that he'd grown up without parents and had 2 cherished childhood dreams: to drive a huge truck and to have a loving family. "As you can see, Lauren, I've accomplished the first part of my life plan. The second part remains." Lauren believed Paul and never once regretted tying her fate to his. Helen was happy for her granddaughter. "At least I'll die calm and happy," she said shortly before passing away. It was after the birth of great-granddaughter Annie. Lauren didn't immediately tell her husband about the conversation with Tyler's biological father. At first, she wasn't sure if she should mention it. Later, fear crept into her heart that Daryl's unexpected appearance would disrupt their family life. Finally, she tried to open up to her husband, approaching the subject carefully. "Paul, I have something critical to tell you." But he didn't let her finish. Instead, he smiled mysteriously and asked in a half-whisper, "Ah, you want to surprise me again. But this time you won't succeed, because I've prepared for everything." Paul proudly lifted his chin and straightened up. Then, in a commanding tone, he called out, "Private Tyler Miller, fetch my album." Lauren let out a nervous laugh. "Paul, what are you up to?" Tyler promptly appeared with the album in his hands. "Dad, you said it was a surprise for Mum, and we don't give surprises for no reason." Paul was clearly enjoying himself. He took the school drawing album from the boy's hands. "Son, you're mistaken. You can surprise someone you love any day of the week. Our Mum has waited many years for this moment. I think she'll be happy with our joint surprise." Lauren prepared to appreciate our creative effort. "Believe me, Tyler and I tried our very best." The woman opened the album and exclaimed, "My God, what is this?" Tyler proudly explained, "Mum, this is you. Daddy and I worked very hard to make sure you turned out happy." The boy looked hopefully at his mother. Lauren felt her eyes watering, her heart warming as if a little sun had been lit inside her. She kissed her son, then her husband's cheek. "Thank you, my dear ones. You've done wonderfully. Your surprise truly moved me." Tyler jumped for joy. Annie joined in the fun. The unstructured trio made the woman smile. She thought, "I won't tell Paul anything yet. I don't want the past to intrude on today." Citing urgent business, Lauren went to the city. 2 years ago, her husband had given her a reliable, comfortable car for her birthday. This gift had made her life much easier. She no longer had to catch the first bus at 5:30 every morning to get to work on time. Leaving the car in the parking lot, she hurried to the meeting place. She wanted to resolve all the loose ends of that long-ago story, one that had left an unhealed wound in her heart. Though Daryl had insisted on meeting at a restaurant, clearly hoping Lauren couldn't resist his proposal, she had firmly refused. "No, Daryl, let's meet by the fountain in the park centre instead." She felt nothing as she drove into town. Only at the park entrance did she feel a twinge in her heart, wondering why Daryl had suddenly remembered her existence after all these years. At first, she didn't spot him. The fountain was crowded, with children and adults, Daryl lost among them. As she looked around, a familiar voice came from behind. "Did you think I wouldn't show up?" Lauren turned sharply. "I didn't think anything. Just tell me why you called me." Her unfriendly tone didn't faze the man. He merely smirked. "I thought you'd be pleased. You haven't even said hello, though I suppose warm greetings aren't necessary?" Daryl laughed. "My, what a woman you've become. So brave now. And looking good, too." Lauren stared coldly at her former lover's insolent face. "Daryl, don't waste our time." The man sighed. "Fair enough. Come, Lauren, let's sit somewhere. We need to have a serious conversation." They found an empty bench deep in the park, though barely. Daryl sprawled across more than half the space. When he hesitated to speak, Lauren prompted, "You dragged me here, yet you're silent. What do you want?" The man tapped his knee. "All right, let's get to the point. Lauren, please just hear me out and try to understand. I wouldn't have dared approach you, but life, or rather problems with offspring, forced my hand." He chuckled unpleasantly and continued, "The problem lies with my wife, not me. I won't pretend to understand the medical details, but competent specialists have said she can't bear children." Lauren asked in surprise, "Daryl, what does this have to do with me?" His insolent gaze burned through her, but his next words still shocked her.
You, Lauren, are the queen on my chessboard. You're my salvation.
Suddenly he grabbed her hands.
Lauren, I know you have a son. He's my son also, and I want to give him a better life. I have everything needed: money, a large house, social status.
Lauren couldn't grasp Daryl's meaning. Her emotions merged into an indistinct mass as she struggled to speak. And how do you plan to do that? Daryl tightened his grip on her hands, his face taking on a desperate expression.
I've told my wife everything, and she's agreed to take Tyler.
Lauren shook her head and tried to pull away. Daryl, have you lost your mind? Only a madman would suggest such a thing. The woman jumped up from the bench and ran for the exit. Don't call me again! Daryl ran after her. Wait, you farm fool, I'll pay you! The kid will at least know a normal life. She ignored his verbal outbursts. Reaching the parking lot, Lauren jumped into her car and sped away. She glimpsed Daryl standing confused, head bowed. No sooner had she left the city than her cell phone rang. It was Daryl.
Lauren, you still don't understand me. Don't you have a heart?
Daryl, I'm sorry for you and your spouse, but I'll never accept your offer.
But why, Lauren? I'll pay you. I'll give you so much money that you can buy yourself a house, several apartments, and a bunch of clothes.
I advise you and your wife to adopt a child from an orphanage. That way you can make at least one person happy. And don't call me again. Threats and curses poured from the receiver, but Lauren turned off her cell phone. She pulled out the SIM card and threw it out the window. When Lauren pulled up to her house, an overwhelming sense of relief washed over her. Tyler and Annie ran out onto the porch, waving their arms and shouting, "Mummy's here! What have you brought us?" Only then did she realise she had forgotten to buy the children treats. Paul studied his wife's face intently.
Lauren, I can't read everything on your face, but I see something happened today.
But if you don't want to tell me, you don't have to. She fell against her husband's chest and cried. Paul, I'm sorry for not saying to you right away, but I met with Tyler's father today, and he basically offered to buy my son from me. I can't comprehend it. Paul stroked his wife's back, soothing her.
Lauren, forget about it. Think of it as just a terrible dream. Tyler is my son, and I won't let anyone harm him.
6 months passed after that fateful meeting. Lauren and her family were preparing for New Year's. There was news on the TV. Suddenly, Lauren saw a familiar face. It was Daryl, and the report was from the courtroom. The young reporter was saying that the defendant had been found guilty of financial fraud and sentenced to 10 years and a huge fine. Lauren only thought that karma always finds those who deserve punishment for their deeds.